Good evening. I want you guys all to put your hands in the air. Woo! All right. And you got to keep them up for a second. I want you to show me how frustrated you are with innovation. 1 being, what are you talking about? Innovation's the greatest thing in the world. 10, let me tell you some stories about my company. Go ahead, show me your fingers. How are you guys feeling? Holy cow, that is a lot of 10 for me, Alex. So my name is, I got to figure out this mic. My name is Dr. Elliot Hedman. For the last 8 years, I've been a consultant for some of the top companies. We're not going to name names today. But in that process, I've got to work with their innovation centers. Before that, I got my PhD at the MIT Media Lab, and I got to work with some of the top professors in the world, and I got to learn what science meant to them too. And this is a hard talk for me. It's a talk I want to get off my chest, because I've noticed a trend. Our culture is killing curiosity. Our culture is killing curiosity. I want to posit that if an organization has been socialized, then it will be structured in a way to not want to innovate, to not want to be curious. And we're suffering. Innovation is suffering. But, we only have 15 minutes. I do not have a solution. I don't have my top 3 ways that you can be curious. Instead, there's a lot of talks here on innovation, and today I want to talk to you about kind of the underbelly, how is innovation made, and why is it that all these companies say they want to innovate, but then oftentimes fail? Okay, got all that negative off her. I'm a really positive person, and this talk is so hard for me. So we're going to start out with the positive, a little breather here. Why is innovation good? Like, what's exciting about innovation? Okay, this is going to be an embarrassing talk for a variety of reasons. This is me in grad school. I absolutely love science. I like learning new things. I like discovering the world. We made those little sensors on those kids' feet that can measure their subconscious emotional reactions. We looked at how does therapy affect kids with autism and ADHD, and we made a better therapeutic experience. And then this is me a little bit older. I got hired to figure out how do we improve the experience of buying a vacuum cleaner. I watched a lot of people buy vacuum cleaners. It ends up, we invented this tennis ball water fountain that the stronger the vacuum is, the more tennis balls they suck up. People loved it, but on top of it, the company actually increased their sales by 9%. When we're curious, when we try new things, that's when we make a profit, that's when we improve, that's when we progress as a society. But this is not a talk about curiosity's great strengths, it's about its weaknesses. So I'm going to share 2 stories with you to get us started. There are 2 parents that I'm friends with, and they had different experiences with their kids. The first one I want to talk about is my uncle. My uncle, he is from Washington, he works at Microsoft, pretty well off. And I'm sitting there drinking wine with him. But you know who's not there? My cousins. Now, if any of you have middle school kids, you know exactly where my cousins are. They're downstairs in the basement playing Fortnite. My uncle turns to me and goes, I just wish they'd stop playing so many video games. And I asked my uncle, so, okay, well, what have you tried? And he said, well, I told him to stop and go outside. That didn't work. But what bothers me is that was the end of the conversation. He didn't have anything else he had tried. He wasn't being curious. Now I want to share another story with you. My friend Tiffany, she worked at IDEO with me, and she's a super creative person. And she had a problem as well. Her son, Mason, was coming into her room every night and starting to bawl. She said it was one of the scariest things you could experience, and he was doing it every night. And so Tiffany was trying to figure this out. She started it off by offering him some prizes. It didn't work, but she didn't stop there. I called her up and asked her to explain to me everything she did. All right, let's see here. She started to talk about the prizes. She gave him stickers. She stayed with him until he fell asleep. She slept with him in a different room. She gave him a different bed. She created a playpen, and that's where she learned Mason is a very good climber. She asked the doctor what should she do, and her doctor said, try the cry it out method. She locked the door. She found a child-proof doorknob she could put on top of the door. She offered Disneyland if he could do it a whole week. She offered him food or television. She started drawing charts like this, and I want to kind of go through this chart. On the left-hand side here, this is Mason's choices for May 1st. Mason can choose to go to sleep, and then when he wakes up, he gets candy and hugs from his family. But now Mason has another choice here too on the right. He could come into the room and wake up mom and dad. And I love this. She actually asked Mason, well, what do you think the punishment should be, Mason? Mason decided that his dog should have to eat Brussels sprouts and he has to go to jail. This worked for a while. Now, I don't give this talk to say, we need to send our kids to jail if they're playing Fortnite. I give this talk because there's a very big difference between what my uncle did and what Tiffany did. And in my experience as a consultant, there are way too many more of my uncles, and there are way too few of my Tiffanys. So, good news. Here's your one slide with text. 3 easy steps to kill curiosity. Number 1, avoid vulnerability. Number 2, own the answer, not the question. And number 3, be a fire department. All right, let's talk about the hard one first. Avoiding vulnerability. Now, brace yourselves, I'm about to shock some of you in the audience. I used to play basketball on my high school basketball team. Now, I do need to clarify a little bit here, is that there's varsity, and then there's junior varsity, and then there's C team. And I was on the C team basketball team. And I should also be a little bit honest about that too, because you see, we lived in a rural town. We would drive like 2.5 hours to go play a basketball game. And then for those 40 minutes, I sat on the bench the entire time, every time. I wasn't really the best. But at the same time, when I was in high school, I didn't really want to acknowledge that. I didn't want to go up to the coach and say, hey, coach, what do I got to do to improve? Instead, I had in my mind, I'm really good at this, and the coach doesn't get me, and that's his problem, not my problem. And I just wonder, what would it take for high school Elliot to be able to go to the coach and say, hey, coach, I really want to play. What do I have to be able to do? But I was scared, because maybe the coach might have said, you have to get better. You're really bad, Elliot. The other players are better than you. Maybe you should quit and do something else. I didn't want to hear that. And so I never asked any questions, and I stayed firm in my beliefs where I felt secure. It ends up my clients kind of do the same thing. I had a client who was losing billions of dollars a year because they had a bad customer experience, and they hired me to fix this problem. I did some background research, and I found a Forbes article. It's not this one, but it specifically said, company name is losing billions of dollars a year because of bad customer experience. And I showed this to my client. I said, hey, did you guys see the article? Did you read that? My client came back to me, and they specifically said, oh yeah, we read that, but that's just one guy, and he doesn't really have his facts correct, so it doesn't really count. That really bothered me. It ends up that even if that guy didn't have the research exactly done right, he was giving them an opportunity for a solution, a possibility for innovation. But instead, my client kind of pushed away and said, I don't want to deal with this. And if any of you are designers in the room, this graph is going to be eerily familiar. I'm a consultant, and I'm specialized in research. But what ends up happening is I can usually find a problem with your company and the big thing that needs to get changed in probably 2 to 3 days. But it's going to take me 2 to 3 months to convince a company to change. I'm disturbed at all the laughter. But no, this is actually what happens, is that the companies, they don't actually want to change. They just kind of want to feel like they're changing. Some of my clients who've hired me, so I usually get the real innovative people, the people like, we're going to make a difference, coming in and hiring me. Those people are constantly telling me how much they hate their jobs, how much they're not liked in the company, and they're probably going to get fired, and do I have an open position in my consulting company? The fact that this is like normal for me in my work is really weird. Okay, got through the vulnerability part. Whew. Number 2, own the answer, not the question. So when a new CEO of JCPenney got hired, he came in with a very specific agenda. We're going to remove coupons from all of JCPenney. Now, there are some people who disagreed with him. The executive vice president specifically, he's like, I've been here for a long time. Are you sure customers don't want coupons? Can we do a user test, like make sure you're right? But the CEO said, nope, I am standing firm in my belief. I own this answer, and we are not going to pivot on it. If you're not with me, you need to leave. And he eventually just got fired for asking that question. So what happened? Well, because he never really asked, what do customers want? And he just said they don't want coupons. They removed them. And then JCPenney stock went down by 30% right afterwards. And now you can buy JCPenney stock on the penny stock. But it's not just industry who has this be confident and strong with your belief. I actually find the same trend in academia as well. Those who are in academia will recognize this graph. This is what I love about research. You get to discover something new. You get to go play. You get to go find something that no one's ever seen before. But it ends up, that's not what you spend most of your time doing. You spend all your time arguing your point of view. Most of the professors I work with, they'll come up with an idea probably early in their career, and then they'll spend the rest of their tenure trying to convince people, guys, it's my idea. Stop listening to other people. I'm the guy who owns the really good idea. And they don't actually get to spend much time, if any, actually trying to discover new things or asking questions like, oh, maybe my idea might not be correct, or maybe there's a different way of looking at it. And I don't blame the academics for this. If you look at how they get their funding, you actually have to apply for a grant by saying, I already know the answer, I know exactly how I'm going to prove it, and I need you to give me money to prove to everyone that I'm right and they're wrong. That is how our research industry works. I just imagine what would it be like for a world where in science class, it's not just about, can you identify the mitochondria? And it's black and white. You either know where the mitochondria is or you don't. All facts are already known and you need to prove to me you know everything. But instead, if we rewarded kids for having questions, what would happen if we rewarded kids for saying, I don't know, but I want to find out? And number 3, be a fire department. Whew, this is a hard talk. Okay, so I got hired by a client to ask a really, really important question. Low-income kids, they're not learning in digital education. What will it take to motivate them and engage them and make them want to learn when they're on the computer? We did a lot of research and we came back with a very specific, clear thing the company needed to do. It ends up that kids need to be able to try again. You need to put a back button in there so if they get it wrong, they can try until they get it right. Because as soon as they start getting things wrong and not being able to correct, they're going to feel like failures and they're not going to want to try anymore. So I present this to my stakeholders and they all agree. They're like, yeah, that seems important, but we actually can't do that, Elliot. We're putting out so many different fires right now that we don't have time or the resources to actually implement any changes. And so if you don't have the runway and you don't have the resources to innovate, don't bother trying to innovate because it's not going to happen. Oh, that was a preview. So I'm about to show you guys a picture. Some of you have already seen it. Don't tell people what it's going to be. Okay, and I want you to reflect as you see this picture, what is this thing that you see first? What is that thing that gets you emotionally excited? A researcher in 1975 asked this exact same question. He asked, why are we emotionally drawn to landscape pictures? And he found 2 things. Number 1, we're really excited by a secure, safe place. Look at that warm house. That warm house is telling me coupons. We need to get rid of them. My critics, they have no idea what they're talking about. The coach doesn't know how good I am at basketball. But the other thing, and this is what gives me hope about society, that we're equally drawn to, is the unknown. Ooh, look at those footprints. I wonder where they're going off to. Why is someone walking around this late in the winter? It's this unknown where all the potential is. Geez, maybe my academic ideas might not be right. I might need to tweak them a little bit. Maybe I should listen to my customers. Maybe they're saying something that's really important. Maybe I might not be that good at basketball. So I want to end by saying that my job at mPath has been to help companies get out of that house, to be insecure. And when I built out my business plan, I was like, there is a clear value in this. There's billions of dollars to be made when we get insecure, be curious, and try new things. But after 8 years, I've learned that my business model is actually flawed. Because you know what? Even though there's a lot of money to actually get out of that house, my clients don't want that. They don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to get pulled out. And I think this is the question of our age. If we can figure out a way to get people out of that house, we can get into Enlightenment 2.0. We can create a place where innovation is going to flourish. But what I leave for all of you guys here today is to figure this out. How are we going to get our industries, academia, and our culture to embrace vulnerability, come out of the house, and see what's outside? Thank you. So I've learned we actually have time for a few questions, maybe. So bring it on. What's my question?
How can we get people out of the house?
Oh, yeah, you know, I specifically said I did not want to give a talk on how to be curious, because then it's all just brandy, and it's like, hire me, that's the correct way. I can tell you what my deep-hearted belief in this is. This isn't going to work for you guys, but I actually think it has to do with education. We need to redefine how we teach science. Science needs to stop being about memorizing facts, and it needs to be about saying, sometimes we don't know the answer, and we're going to learn how to learn it together. That's what I care deeply about. From a cultural perspective, in your companies, which I'm sure many of you are, I could give a whole talk on this, is realize that innovation is not about discovering something new or having a good idea. It's about cultural change. Because the culture you're in right now is why you are the way you are. And until you change the culture, new innovations are not going to happen. Any other questions? You guys are like, oh, we're all curious now.
How much of this is leadership versus decisions that people who actually do the jobs could be making?
The question is, how much of this is leadership versus people who do the jobs are making? From what I have found in my work, usually it's not the CEOs who hire me. One day I'll get to hang out with all the CEOs and they'll hire me. I'm usually hired multiple rungs down, usually by a person who's frustrated because their job is to innovate. What happens is, that person hires me, we do kick-ass research, we figure out, okay, this is what we're gonna do, we deliver it to a person, then we deliver it to the next person, and then someone high up who has 2 minutes looks at it and is like, oh, I don't really care about innovation, that's not really my thing, and it just gets killed. I firmly believe if you want an innovative company, you need an innovative CEO. You need a CEO who says, I'm not going to compromise, I wanna see an improvement here, and if I don't see an improvement, then we're going to have restructuring. But that's not how things go right now. Everyone says they want to have innovation, but at the end of the day, all we're measuring is, well, how's the bottom line doing? Are anyone complaining? Okay, we're good. So you have to hold people accountable from the top because inevitably there's going to be obstacles on the way. Any other fun questions?
Let's say you're part of a company where the company doesn't want to change. They're the same. But then they say, you guys form a little group, go and innovate, and then bring it to us. Which is exactly what you're saying. They should. How would you deal with that?
Yeah. And so his question is, what if a company creates a silo company specifically around innovation? Like, okay, you guys, we're not going to touch you. You go do your innovation and then come back. I'm going to just say straight out, I don't have a lot of experience in that space. I'm usually working directly with the company. So my guess is probably as good as your guys's. My initial, because I have a lot of my friends who built companies, like little startup companies that get enveloped by a bigger company. You guys all know the story of what happens there. This innovative company, super creative, got this whole idea. They get eaten by a bigger company, and the bigger company's like, oh, let's just kill all the innovative parts. Let's just remove it all. And then the two cultures collide. And so inevitably, you're going to have to face a culture one way or another, or just never talk to each other. All right. Any other things? Do I have a better answer? Guys, this was not called the cure for the death of curiosity. It was specifically, we're all doomed, curiosity's dying, I'm putting on my goth makeup. Oh my God. As some of you guys know, like, the people who are innovative have to be the cheerleaders. So like, I literally gave this talk because I was just like, I'm not giving another talk on innovation. I'm just going to tell you how I'm actually feeling right now. And there are solutions, but I think the first step to solutions, and this is just good research methods, is to understand the problem. The fact that this entire audience is 100% full is showing us that this is not, you are not alone. Most of the people I talk to, they feel like they're like, my one company, they don't get me. All of the companies don't get you guys. This is a cultural problem. It is not just your company that's struggling with this.
I'm curious why you're so curious about the world. Did you have any experience that can be transferred and copied to other people to make them vulnerable and curious?
Ooh, oh my God, she asked me a question I never thought about. Her question is, how are you so curious? And how could you teach us to be as curious as you are? It's weird, because like that basketball story shows that I was not always curious. You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna take a guess here. I think I'm curious because I'm anxious, actually. I mean, my family's pretty anxious. You wouldn't guess it, but I actually get pretty nervous too. And because I get anxious, I like to really understand the world around me. I'll be the first person when I give a talk to be like, okay, what was bad about it? Just tell it to me now. I want to know about it. I'm going to be like, okay, I want to make sure all my advisors are happy. I got to check in with everyone. And so I have what people call empathic curiosity, that I just naturally want to understand the world around me. But what I do is I tap into that anxiety and I use that to fuel my engagement. And then once you start being curious, it's so much fun because you're like, wow, I just looked this up and I discovered something new. I looked up this, I discovered something new. And then people start paying you because you're so curious. And then you're like, okay, this is cool, this is fun. And then people start getting upset at you because you're curious. And that's where I am right now. But
Sorry, of your clients that have been successful in changing and convincing the company to change, what are the 2 or 3 things that they've done really well that your other clients haven't done?
Yeah, so the question is, okay, you've got to have at least one case where something happened. Well, we've ran out of time. I will answer that question first, though. I'm going to be honest with you. This is about vulnerability. Remember that vacuum cleaner study I showed you? I wanted to get you excited about curiosity. That water fountain got removed. Now, even after increasing sales by 9%. In fact, the entire staff that hired me got fired. Yeah, welcome to my world. Not because of me, not because of me. They liked my work, but the innovation was just not fitting in the culture. So I would say the things I'm most proud of and the changes that I have made have all been with small startup companies. When there's a company of 4 or 5 people who are just starting out, they're totally willing to say, I have no idea what I'm doing, Elliot. I'm like, great, I know, no one does, but you admit it. This is a good start. So I've had the greatest impact with startups. And I will say that I intentionally this year have decided to, in addition to doing consulting with mPath, we're actually just starting our own company now. I'm sick of telling people this is how you should care about kids and do education. So we're just going to do it ourselves. And we're going to make sure that curiosity is the #1 thing that we care about and value in the entire company. I'll let you know how it goes. All right. Thank you, guys.